Good afternoon, family. It is February 3rd, 2022. If you're new to my channel, my name is Jonathan, and today is day 460 of my 3-year challenge to lose 300 pounds. If you guys enjoy these videos, make sure you do get subscribed to the channel. Also, make sure that you click on the bell icon so you'll get alerted when I go live, which is usually at 4 p.m. on weekdays. I'm back at my regularly scheduled time today, 4 p.m. Central. And if outside of my live streams you want to discuss anything or reach out to me, you can join our Discord. There is a link for the Discord down in the description below. Also, if you are interested in getting any type of meal ideas or seeing the meals that our family enjoys, there is a link down to our Pinterest board that has a lot of those recipes in it there. Like I said, today's day 460. Let me switch over here. All right. So I hope you guys all had a great evening. Yesterday after the stream, I realized that I forgot to record the weigh-in separately. I went live with my OBS system, but I didn't hit the button to record the live stream. And so I'm not sure if I'm able to cut that out and post it separate. So actually, after my live stream yesterday, I sat here and redid my weigh-in. Thankfully, I weighed the same weight. I didn't lose any weight between the time that I started the weigh, or it came up the same weight. Luckily, I didn't have any issues with that. And so I did post a clip of my weigh-in. It wasn't my live weigh-in, but it was a weigh-in right after. So if you guys get a chance to go over, check out that video. It was posted earlier today. Give that a like and maybe share that around with anybody you know that's looking to try to lose some weight. Carrie's saying hello. Hi, Carrie. I hope everything's going great at home today. If anybody has any non-scale victories they'd like to share, I'd love to hear your guys' non-scale victories. Any on-scale victories being weigh-in Wednesday yesterday, I'd love to hear that as well. So after I redid my weigh-in and said all of the same things, only better and in a more concise fashion that I didn't have to edit very much. It was kind of nice. I was able to do it very quickly because it was my second take at it last night. But after that, I got home last night and I ate a ton of food. I was very hungry. I hadn't eaten since Tuesday morning, and I was excited to get some food. So Carrie had been waiting to make chickpea tikka masala for last night. So when I got home, I went and had a big bowl of chickpea tikka masala. I actually had 2 bowls of it. I finished what she made. But because I was that hungry, or I was that excited about having chickpea tikka masala, I guess. And then a little bit later on in the evening, I did end up having some of the oatmeal that Carrie had left over from me not having oatmeal for breakfast. So I definitely went to bed stuffed full of food, without a doubt. In fact, this morning we got up. I almost questioned even eating breakfast. Because I wasn't that hungry, but I knew that I wasn't going to be eating again till I got home. So I did have oatmeal for breakfast this morning. But Carrie had found a recipe. I don't know if she ordered the actual book from the Esselsteins, but there was a contest that the Esselsteins, who do a lot of plant-based recipes, had put out to their they put it out to their social media audience, or put it out there to the world to submit your favorite recipes for whole food plant-based. And they tried out a bunch of the recipes, and there was a waffle recipe that won. That Carrie says that she made extra breakfast. Yes. There was a waffle that was the recipe that won the competition, and we are having some company over this weekend And so Carrie wanted to try the recipe. So, okay. So Carrie's mom bought Rip Esselstyn's book and then sent that recipe. So I think she was telling Carrie what she wanted made for breakfast when she was visiting this week. Um, and so they had that. I actually only had a bite of it. Carrie gave me like half of a waffle, and uh it was very dense. It was really good. She put some fruit on top of it, and I just knew that I wasn't going to be able to eat the oatmeal and eat that. Uh and so I only had a taste of it, but it was really good. And it was, like I said, it was a very thick waffle. So I think it's going to go over well this weekend when we make it, and we're looking forward to that. All right, let's see. So I named the stream "Food Addiction Sucks." Carrie says a great thing about that recipe is that it is SOS free. A lot of times we can find a waffle recipe, but it isn't SOS free, and or not just waffle recipes, other recipes we find that we kind of have to modify for our diet, but this is one that fits our diet. So the food addiction sucks. And the reason I named it that was actually because I'm continuing to read the book Salt, Sugar, Fat from Michael Moss. I really enjoy the book. He does a great job of spelling out, giving this timeline of events. He does jump all over the place with different kind of inventions and different things. And sorry guys. Um he jumps all over the place timeline wise. He goes from 1915 talking about uh how Kraft got its start with processed cheese, and then he jumps to 2010 talking about um different uh manufacturers releasing new products or different things that Kraft has done currently too. So I really enjoy the book. It is, I gotta do something. I have this fan that's making a noise, and if you have headphones on, you might hear it. I forgot to turn it off. It's a heater, and anyways, it's making a hissing noise in my ear, and it's distracting me today. Um, for the book, he's really done a great job talking about how these companies are exploiting our kind of cravings. Like I said early on in the book, he talked to one of the food executives who kind of said we never had to find what we never had to find foods to satisfy people's hunger. We only had to find foods to satisfy their cravings. And because nobody ever really gets themselves to a point, we don't live in a world where we get nutrient deficient, and so they just prey on what we want and what we crave, and they get us to buy as much as possible. Uh the part of the book that I am listening to now, the author seemed to take a really deep interest in her. I'm not sure. So outside of the book, the author is an investigative reporter. He's won a Pulitzer Prize for investigative reporting, and in the book, he was talking about doing research on the you guys might remember back like in 2000, I guess it's like a decade ago or within the last decade, that a lot of the food, it was actually the USDA, I believe, got in trouble for the product called food slime or pink slime, the food additive or the meat additive food slime. And I remember them talking about it at the time. I remember being grossed out about the idea, but I didn't understand what pink slime was. And after listening to this book, he does a pretty good job explaining what it is. In a sense, is that it was meat that they were actually previously sending off to be used for like dog food and animal food or animal feed, that they found a way to take that meat that was very high in fat. It was like 70% fat meat. And by using a centrifuge process, they were able to separate the meat from the fat, and it created this very lean meat that they were able to then take that lean meat, and I believe they use like uh, ammonia to tenderize the meat. Because and I've seen it, I guess, in meat that I've bought before, but in order to tenderize meat, or in order to make meat more palatable for people sometimes because it's tough, they mechanically tenderize it by poking needle holes in the meat at the processing plant. But then for some meats that the mechanical process doesn't work, or that might not be as efficient, they use a chemical process where they use a chemical on the meat to cause it to tenderize or break down over time. And that's what the ammonia was used for with the meat that was uh, high fat meat that was then separated from its fat component to make a very lean meat. Then it was given ammonia to tenderize it, and then they would make it into bricks and sell it as bricks to be added to other ground beef. And it was just crazy. I mean, just like, and that's just my explaining of it. He goes into more depth in the book, or he does a better job explaining or leading up to it in the book. But it really kind of grosses me out, and it grossed everybody out when it kind of got released. And he, I don't know if he released the article that actually coined the term pink slime. I'm just getting into this story. But he just kind of went through the process of how it's made, and he's going into what it was, the ramifications, or once it was kind of discovered that they were doing that with the meat, what happened. So I'm excited to get in my car and find out what happens in the book. So I do recommend that you guys get the book, Salt, Sugar, Fat by Michael Moss. Uh, because of him talking about this, uh, this particular thing with the pink slime, it got me interested in kind of finding out what Michael Moss had written that won him the Pulitzer Prize for investigative reporting. And so I got on Wikipedia and just kind of looked up Michael Moss to see what it was. And the actual article that won him, in I think it was in 2010, it looks like it was an article on um E. coli. There was a girl who had purchased a burger. Her name was Stephanie Smith, and she had purchased a burger that was contaminated with E. coli. And her illness got so severe that she was put into a medically induced coma for months. And then, when the doctors were able to bring her out of the coma, she was paralyzed and suffered organ failure and cognitive damage. And then, I don't know, that story was from 2010. And uh the it says here in the article that Stephanie Smith's E. coli illness was the most severe that they had ever seen. And so his report just says that it kind of followed the path of the ground beef that was eventually purchased by her. And it's just crazy that because he does in the book right now, he did mention E. coli briefly, and just how it is, how it comes about in meat, and it just comes from cow shit. Or in the thing that he talked about too was that there are some cuts of meat that are more susceptible to having E. coli contamination because of their location on the animal. Um, but it's just crazy that that was a possibility, getting something that severe just from eating meat. Like that Stephanie Smith didn't do anything wrong except for buy a hamburger, and that happened to her. So that's unfortunate, you know. But yeah, I got looking into him and kind of seeing that story. And then I also saw that he wrote another book. It actually came out just under a year ago. It was in March of 2021. And the book was called Hooked: Food, Free Will, and How the Food Giants Exploit Our Addictions. And that's why I named this Food Addiction Sucks, because the food giants have been exploiting our addictions for decades. Um, and it's been from the way that they advertise to how they create the food, the content of the food, uh, and even simple things too that you wouldn't think of, but like the items that are on the nutritional labeling and the way they're laid out and the sizing of everything on the nutritional label is by no accident, and the food industry has had a huge influence on what the government decides to make you know, their regulation for those things. So, and then also I've talked about this a little bit, but you don't think about things that you seem like have always existed or they were always there. And I didn't realize uh that, I guess I knew that the modern nutritional hold on. So, I know that the modern nutritional labeling wasn't always there, but I never really thought of like when the actual labeling that has like the calories and the total fat and saturated fat, cholesterol and sodium and total carbohydrates. I never really thought about when that was initially introduced. And from what I can tell, I again, I haven't really done it a ton of research, but um it hasn't been that long that it's been the way that it is. And I guess I always would have assumed it would have been like that forever, but I don't know that it was even that way, or as clear or as set up until the 90s, until I was, like 10 years old. I don't know. I was so young and it wasn't even on my radar to even look at nutrition facts on foods, but I don't know what kind of labeling they had on foods prior to the 90s. Uh, but the food industries, they have their hand in everything, but uh the way that they manipulate us and they spend the money to manipulate us. They do studies to find out things like less greasy food with the same calorie content causes people to eat more. So if it's noticeably greasy or noticeably fatty, they'll eat less. So we'll just make it just as fatty. It just won't be as noticeably fatty. The other thing about like not realizing before my time, he talks a little bit in the book or about the food combining, and that prior to this system that it's called the checkoff system, which was, I believe, created in the 80s, that helped to create a beef and dairy council, I guess is what that started, or like it got all of it created funding to advertise essentially for beef and dairy and milk. Yeah, beef and dairy. Duh. And they took this money and used it to advertising, but also in a way to try to increase eating of food. They started mixing meat and cheese together. And one of the companies, just like the Esselsteins, set off for people to give recipes with whole food plant based. These big mega corporations at one point sent out things to their customers to say, hey, send us your best recipe that uses meat in it. Because at one point, it wasn't meat wasn't used as a recipe item, and it was like separate. You would have your fruit, or you would have your vegetable or your starch, and then you would have a piece of meat. You would have a hunk of meat. You wouldn't have this processed meat, or I don't even know how popular ground beef has been or how long ground beef's been around, but um or yeah, like Carrie says, they use terminology to trick us too, like calling chicken crispy instead of fried. That way, because fried has that connotation of being higher calories, but crispy is seems drier. It does like yeah, it seems like a crunch, like a dryness. Uh, when in fact it's probably just as unhealthy. And a lot of times they also have to do things to those foods to make them drier or crispier, and they're adding chemicals that we don't really understand what they're doing, like he talks about in the book when they created uh the instant pudding. The biggest issue they or one of the big issues they had was the separation of the molecules when you were cooking it, or the you would have to continually stir it while cooking it to help prevent those molecules from separating from each other. And they found that if you add a food chemical to the product, it keeps those molecules bound together so that they won't separate from each other. Also, there's a lot of using chemicals to like create heating, which I never really thought of. And I again, this is way above my pay grade or knowledge, but when like again, just from the book, the way he explained some of the food processes, I never thought of them using chemicals to like dry foods out quickly. And like I said, it's very he doesn't go into it deep, but it just kind of references he makes to the process that they use to make some of these items that they had to learn, before they figured out that this chemical or this, I don't know, maybe enzyme or this whatever would cause this chain reaction. Um, we just ate slabs of meat and had our starches and our vegetables and our fruits. It wasn't eating hamburger helper. It wasn't having corn dogs on a stick. It wasn't uh I mean, millions of things you can name. I mean, the freezer aisle, the entree section of the freezer aisle didn't exist 30 years ago. It was frozen vegetables and, other items. And yeah, it's completely different now. And we don't realize that it's different because it's been such a slow change. And there's been so many differences that have been for convenience, and they've been great to have, like the invention of the Lunchable did help a generation of working mothers to feed their kids. Um, but you know, if the companies, it's so tough because the companies are just looking at it from a money standpoint. They're just trying to make profit, and they're giving people what they want. And the government never stepped in and said, "Hey, we have to put a limit." Like if the government would have come in and said, "You can't have, more than X amount of fat, or you have to allow people to add the fat themselves to these items." Like you have to give it to them in a leaner way, and then give them the option to mix in the gravy. I don't know. But it's the system we live in now. It's thankfully not a system that you have to be stuck in. I'm not stuck in the system anymore. I'm not worried about the newest release from I don't know, the Frito Lays. I can remember being so excited. Frito Lays had a couple years there where they released like five, like short term or trial flavors, and it was a thing to go out and make sure you tried all the flavors, you know, like that was all just to get you to eat more food. You know, they didn't give a shit about providing a better item for you. They just wanted the money that you were going to eat chips anyways. Why not buy their chips? Because they made a Reuben sandwich flavor. Um, but yeah, you don't have to be stuck in it. There's still plenty of items at the grocery store that are edible. There's plenty of processed stuff too that is not, you know, that's healthier. But you, and what I mean by process, I'm talking about like Ezekiel bread and the nut butter, you know, things that are slightly processed, but or even really canned items. A lot of those you would have to consider processed a little bit because uh, they've done something to help keep them from going bad at some point. So, uh, yeah, I really recommend this book. I'm interested in checking out Michael Moss's new book, Hooked. I don't think that'll be the next book I read. I'm not sure what I'm going to do after this book. I should see how much time I have left. I know I'm over halfway through the book. It was a 14-hour total. So I'm about 10 hours or 9 hours in. I got about 4.5 hours left in the book. So I should be done with that within the next couple weeks, which will be nice. I'm not sure what I'm going to read or listen to afterwards. I might take a little bit of a break from the diet books, you know. But I've said that before, and then I found something that I really liked, so I picked it up and watched that. Trying to think, I don't know that I have anything else. There was something. Can't think now. I'm sure I'll think about it and I can talk about it tomorrow. I do want to thank you guys for checking out my broadcast today. It was been a good day. I've felt full all day, probably too full all day. I definitely need to get these oats through me. You know, I was thinking, it's so weird. I wonder if there's anybody that, you know, actually, I looked it up to see if there's anybody that promotes an all oat diet because I feel like I have a lot of oats in my diet, or I have had a lot of oats in my diet the last couple weeks. And there was one I looked up, but it also talked about allowing a little bit of milk. So that wasn't one that I was a big, I just thought I would, because there's people that talk about going on potato diets and going on, rice diets and things like that, but I don't know. I just never thought of it if anybody ever went on an oatmeal diet. Um, Carrie says, "Good salads for dinner." Yes, I'm excited to have a salad for dinner. I'll try to get a photo of it. Maybe I'll put it on my Instagram or put it on the Discord. I got to get better about posting on Instagram. But yeah, the salads we have are awesome. They're big mixing bowls full of salad. Mustard dressing, I hope, but we'll see what Carrie decides to give us. Carrie says that she'd eat oats more than once a day. She loves them. Yeah, I'm sure there are people that do eat them multiple times a day. I I just don't know. It's funny how I don't get sick of them. I really like the steel cut oats and the oat groats. Like the closer they are to being actual oats, the more I like them. So, um, anyways, I'm gonna get out of here tonight. Go home, have some salad for dinner. God, what a crazy person. Um, it's yeah. I 2 years ago, I don't know that I would have expected that I was gonna say that. I never would have expected I would say that. So I'm happy. You know what? Um, it's a good thing that I'm saying that, I guess. So if you'd have told me 2 years ago I was saying that, you know, I probably would be happy. I'd be surprised. Be really surprised, but I'd be very happy that I figured it out. Well, I'm 100 pounds for figuring it out, but 220. Then I can say I figured it out. You guys got to listen to me. Start eating a whole food plant-based diet. All right. I'm out of here, guys. Thanks for checking out my video. If you haven't started your diet yet, get started right now. There's no reason to wait. There's nothing coming up that's more important than getting your health and well-being taken care of. Nobody ever gets to the end of their diet or gets to their goals and says, "Man, I wish I would have waited that extra couple weeks." Every single person looks back and says, "I wish I would have started sooner. I wish I would have known what I knew now. I wish I would have known how good I would feel. I wish I would have known how shitty I was feeling." I didn't realize, I thought I was doing great. I watched a video of somebody today where they were comparing themselves to another overweight person. They're like, "Well, at least I'm mobile. At least I'm able to take care of my kids." I thought that too, but I was doing a shit job of it. So, anyways, get started right now. Go all in. Don't fall for the traps, the myth of moderation, the myth of moderate change. You're not gonna all of a sudden decide that you like eating salads when you're having cookies afterwards. You got to go all in. You got to get rid of the junk food and eat a very low calorie dense, high nutrient diet. The myth of moderate eating, that we can eat less. If you eat a lot of food, if your body is designed to eat a lot of food, you're not going to change your body's you're not going to change that. Or you don't have to change that. How is that? You don't have to change that. If your body loves to eat food, you don't have to change that your body loves to eat food. Just change the food that your body eats, and eventually your body will love to eat the food that you change to. So starting eating a whole food plant-based diet, SOS free. Don't wait, guys. Get started now. You will be so happy.